Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Be Extraordinary podcast. We have a very special guest this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know Rod, Taylor, and myself have talked about our journey through our stage of entrepreneurship, insurance agency owners, and just, awesome partnership that's been an incredible journey for us. And that specific journey has been measured back to a specific origin. And that gentleman has been mentioned on this podcast many times. He's been in our story with everywhere that we've gone. You can hear his voice almost in some multiple points of our content. A lot of the philosophy that we have to this day was birthed through his mentorship. So today is an extremely special day because we have the man, the myth, the legend, my mentor, Rodney's mentor, and Taylor's mentor, Mr. John Drennan, on the podcast today. John, thank you so much for being here.
Welcome, man.
Oh, man, I'm honored and humbled. Thank you.
Well, man, it's I know before we turned the camera on, I was giddy, and I feel like I was almost doing like a cartwheel in this studio because it has been years since we've sat down and had, one of these conversations. But every time we do, it's always rich, and it's as if we picked up right where we left off back when our years of building together on a daily, almost hourly basis, it seems like. So what I wanted to do this morning or this afternoon, John, if it's okay with you, I have your bio in front of me, and usually we'll summarize this stuff and we'll go through it and we'll give everybody kind of the high points. But today is a very special day for us personally, and I wanted to go through it and just read it because I think it's very important that the audience understand who you are, and what you've meant to us, but more importantly, what you've meant to thousands of people across the country. You've been at this business game for a very long time in multiple different facets with multiple different industries, coaching and teaching and mentoring a very large amount of people. And I think it'd be great for everybody just to hear your journey on paper. But then after that, I'd love to kind of, you can fill in some of the context. So Mr. John Drennan is an experienced educator, entrepreneur, author, coach, and trainer. After an initial career as a high school teacher and coach, he entered the business world. His first business role was coordination of the rollout and installation of over 2,000 specialized communication devices in a national chain of department stores. He later co-founded a company which recognized by Inc. magazine as one of America's fastest growing companies. As a result, Mr. Drennan was named Entrepreneur of the Year in his hometown, Ann Arbor, Michigan, go blue, and was a finalist for Ernst & Young Michigan Entrepreneur of the Year Award. Since 1998, John Drennan has grown a Legal Shield marketing organization of thousands of associates across North America and has been recognized as one of Legal Shield's Millionaire Club inductees and top leaders throughout the country. He has been a speaker and trainer throughout the country during that time. John taught MBA classes on business planning as a lecturer for 2 semesters, and he coached entrepreneurs and small business owners on mindset and strategy. He authored his first book, which we're going to get into today, The Tao of Network Marketing, in August of 2021. The book's narrative focuses on the wisdom and benefits a person can experience when they take the journey of network marketing done correctly. He is in the process of launching Consergo, which we're going to talk about today, which is incredible, a personal development platform connecting seekers and teachers. John is a longtime student of personal development with interests in many subjects. He currently lives in New Hampshire with his wife, Lynn, and near his 2 grandchildren. So, oh man, that gives me goosebumps even reading the whole thing.
Goosebumps too, man.
It's amazing. Thank you for being on the show, John. It's amazing.
I didn't have grandkids when I first met you, Brett.
No, lots changed. Some things don't change, but some things do, man. So that's awesome.
Thank you guys. And as you're reading that and opening and I'm reflecting, yeah, we worked together for quite a while, but what I remember most right now is sitting in your home in a spare bedroom office when you guys were first conceiving Urban Young. I don't think you had the name yet. And you were talking about concepts in terms of what you wanted to do. I remember to this day thinking, I'm here as a seed is being planted, and one day there will be a healthy plant and a healthy harvest. And that's what I'm feeling right now. Like, I'm so proud of you guys.
Oh, man.
That's super special, man.
That means a lot.
Make me cry on this.
That means a lot.
Has anybody cried on this damn show yet?
Yeah. Well, and I get that anybody who hears this won't have that story. I mean, I was there and I remember it. And we were talking offline here with Taylor sitting there. I remember sitting in the stands of UCF watching him play basketball. And that was, I started my first career. I was coaching high school basketball. I played Division III and coached for a while as an assistant at the college I played. And then I coached high school. And, you know, being at that game was just so special.
You know, I remember that so clearly, man.
Yeah.
You were such a supporter, even sometimes at a close and some from afar. And I was always just amazed that you made the time to come out there and support, really.
I remember the story from that night. I wasn't able to make it to that game. And John comes back to, I think you were staying at my house. And he comes back to the house and he's telling me about the game. He's like, Taylor, man, he got the outlet pass and everybody's run up the court and he throws this one-handed bounce pass from basically the length of the court, right? You remember telling me that story?
Yeah.
It's amazing. T.Y., man. Always fun to watch T.Y. play some ball.
Floor general, baby.
Yeah, but it's different when you watch basketball with somebody who understands basketball, right? That's why it was always fun. We used to talk shop and talk basketball because it's a completely different you just see things completely different. So, and that was always fun.
Yeah, in fact, when I quit coaching, I've never become a fan of basketball. What I've always been is an observer. I've always just watched to see strategy and fundamentals and mindset. And I just love taking the game in that way versus being the fan. You know, I don't paint my face or carry the pom-poms, but I see what's going on.
Couldn't agree with you more. Somebody said it best the other day, like, you know, don't get caught in watching the person with the ball too much. Make sure you're seeing what the people without the ball are doing, which is most of the court, right? And that's the strategy. I really borrow from that too. It is hard to paint your face once you've been in the arena, you know.
That's great.
That's a good metaphor for business and life right there. Don't get too caught up in the person with the ball. Look at everybody without the ball. That's great. Well, John, I'd love to kind of go back in time. Obviously, that bio is so strong just because it brings back incredible memories, and obviously there's a lot that's added to that since, you know, we haven't directly worked together. I'd like to maybe kind of fill in some context, your story from your point of view, and then maybe we'll get into how we met a little bit and go from there. So for the viewers at home, the listeners at home, how did you get into this business game? What are you up to now, and kind of what's your story here?
A lot of that's in my book. So I started out as a high school teacher and coach. I loved basketball. I loved coaching. And I enjoyed teaching. And I love teaching. And, great coaches are great teachers. And I thought at that time I was on track to be a head college coach. But our second child was born. Now, the first child started the process. The second child is when I had the realization that I can't be a parent and a husband and a successful basketball coach at a high level. I just believe that. I saw data on the number of college basketball coaches who had gotten divorced, and I read the stories, and I knew the deal. I would go to the NCAA finals every year and go in on the practices, and that's in the days of Dean Smith and people like that. And so I remember weighing, can I stay with that path? And I finally said no. So I literally stepped away from business, or rather coaching and teaching, and stepped into business. And so anyone who's listening, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that was uncomfortable because my self-image was primarily basketball coach. But 2 years later, it took about 2 years, I could look in the mirror and see a businessman. So that's how I went from teaching and coaching to business. Now, I was very fortunate because I met a gentleman who was looking for a partner to work with a special product. And you mentioned in the bio, we ended up placing over 2,000 specialized units into a national chain of department stores. And I led that up. And that was about a 2.5-year project. But what was great about that, well, number one, I earned more in my first check from that than I had earned the past 3 years teaching.
Oh, wow.
What it taught me was how you can earn money if you're in the right place in the right time. It taught me time. It began to teach me leverage. And that partner and I went on to start the other company you talked about. And that company I thought would be one I would sell and earn millions. But that didn't happen. We actually hit a gauntlet of challenges, one after another. We did sell the company, but it was nothing close. At that point, we were pretty much selling because we kind of hit the time to move on button. So that taught me a whole lot of things. That whole process taught me a lot of things. Now, I started business without a business degree and ended up having that experience. And I was being asked to come in and speak to classes at the university about entrepreneurship, and that led to me being asked to teach a class as an adjunct lecturer. And I did that for a couple of semesters. And every one of those things, and I'm talking about them briefly because they all played such a part in my journey. You know, teaching MBA students, you're teaching some of the best of the best. You're teaching people who tend to have advantages in life, and they're going to do well. And that was a very different scenario than when I later stepped into the world of network marketing. And ultimately, here's why I did that. I knew I wanted time and money and therefore choice, freedom. Now, if you got time and money, freedom, you've got choice freedom. And I believe the number one value that people are pursuing as human beings is freedom. And so in writing the Tao of network marketing, I realized that's been my common thread all along. I left teaching and coaching because I felt the coaching would not give me the freedom. I got into business thinking, okay, I know business owners ultimately have more freedom. But when I had my company with 70 employees and wanted to take a 1-week vacation, I remember I needed a week to get ready and 2 weeks to clean up the mess when I got back. So it was a 4-week process.
Right, exactly.
And I know you can relate. So I thought, well, you know, I'm getting there. But what I saw in network marketing is true freedom from the standpoint, you don't employ people, you inspire people. You're not a boss, you're a coach. You don't have to be responsible for all of the fulfillment and financial trackings and all of those things. You basically are the leader of a group of people who all want their own sense of freedom. So I feel like I'm rambling, but that's kind of my background and how the dots connect.
I don't know what you guys, but I'm sitting here and I'm reminded of conversations from our early years of our relationship, and I'm listening with the same intention that I listened back then in those early years of our network marketing career together, and in the early years of our forming the idea of Urban Young. It is an absolute, it's such a pleasure and such an honor to have you on this show, man, because I'm just... You are a coach, and you're a consummate coach, and you have such a delivery about you, man. I miss it. This feels really, really good, and I just want to say that. I jumped you. I didn't want to.
Well, I was just going to say it's just funny. John, we were having we had a guest on the podcast. Man, it was probably the last episode, maybe a couple episodes. Nick Patty, who just opened his business down in Jupiter and just opened an agency, and he was talking about his identity as an athlete. And I'm sitting with these two guys, and they were discussing how difficult it was to move away from that identity when you just hold on to that of how you associate yourself with moving into the business world. And it's just amazing how you just talk to so many successful, business leaders that have moved from sports to business, and they all say the same thing, right? It's just funny how these patterns continually come. And you always say, here's another John Drennan-ism: success leaves clues. That's a clue, ladies and gentlemen, right there. So, it's
true,
just
man.
great. I mean, we just had somebody on the podcast, and we just had a full discussion about that, and that was how you led off. So, I wanted to say that because this is why personal development is so awesome and so matters so much, because if you're a student of it and you pay attention, you start to recognize rhythms and you start to recognize patterns, which is cool. That's cool that you said that.
John,
No, I want to weigh in on this for a moment. There's a bit of a paradox in that, in business, you really got to focus, and you guys want to be known as Urban Young and this powerhouse in the field that you're in. Yet, we're so much more than that. I mean, I look at Rod. Rod's a principal of Urban Young, but he's also a father. He's also a husband. He's also an athlete, primarily golfer, but played professional golf. He's a friend. He's a sibling. He's a son. He's so much more. He's a hunter. And to me, that's the richness of life. And I talk about this in my book, that the top elite earners in network marketing, typically their identity is that. I never wanted my identity to be one thing like that. And so it's a bit of a paradox, and there's not a right or wrong, but that's just a perspective that I've tried to keep in perspective. I'm more than a business person. I'm more than a teacher. I'm more than, so I just think that needs to be said more often.
That's a wise, insightful statement. I mean, it resonates big time. You think to yourself, you talk about people that are super, super successful and they're singularly focused, right? But I'll bet you that if you peel back the layers, there's probably way more to them than that singular focus that appears always from the external view.
I was on a coaching call and we were just talking about how, that's all good and great, but what happens when that's peeled away, right? Life happens, things change, things pivot, right? If that's your sole identity and you've put all your eggs in that basket, it's fun. It's fun to have focus and get up every day and go after something. You got to have that. But, if you're not able to have the wide lens of what your real value is and who you are, that can get very difficult. You see people spiral out of control when all of a sudden they lose a job. Right? Business doesn't go the way you're expecting, John. Right? You run into some barriers. Right? You move away from coaching, or you move away from athletics because life changes, whether it's in your control or out of your control. It's like I feel like having gratitude for all these different things that you bring to the table allows you to have a little better perspective of the juice of life, as you would call it. So it's true.
And I also think it's more attractive. I remember my introduction to you, John, and out of the three of us, I've had the pleasure of being mentored by you, but probably not to the level that you worked with Brett and Rod, which seemingly was on an hourly, daily basis, really, because I was in college and doing the basketball thing. But I remember meeting you, and even from a network marketing standpoint, when you think of how the perception of an industry, I remember being so attracted to your broad experience and your story and your relatability. And here's this guy that seems to be successful in a lot of different areas of his life, values a lot of different areas of his life. It's almost like a difference between, yes, we're absolutely amazed by the person that's laser focused and number one in the world, but then you look at that and say so much of that has led to crumbling of their marriage or their life or their whatever it may be. And I think the older I get, hopefully the wiser I get, I seem to be magnetically drawn more to the people that say, hey, these are a few things that I define as important, and it's important to me that those things get the level of nourishment. So when our introduction happened back in the day, I just remember being so attracted to that very thing. The same reason why you could sit in a business seminar and be speaking, or you could be at my basketball game and supporting as a friend. And the same reason and that same level of relatability, I just remember being very attracted to that.
What a cool statement.
Awesome. Brett, back to what you were talking about, the athlete who gets hurt and can't play anymore. Oftentimes that crumbles their life. Others view themselves broader. And just last night, I was actually watching part 2 of this amazing documentary on Muhammad Ali. I used to live in Louisville, Kentucky, where he was born and raised and, started his fighting career. And I'm watching this last night, and the group that was leading him, I'm missing the word, his business team out of Louisville, really got concerned and challenged when he chose the religion Islam. And they talked about the money that would be lost in endorsements and things. And Muhammad Ali never wavered. He said, that's not important to me. And those weren't just words. I mean, while he's considered the greatest ever, there was a whole period of his boxing life where he couldn't box because he stuck to his principles. Now, this is kind of a outlier example, but it's an incredible example of somebody just knowing who they are and that they're more than, he was the greatest in the world at his sport, but he saw his life in such a broader context.
That's such a good example.
I wanted to bring that up because I literally was watching that last night. So.
That's a good example. Yeah.
John, I want to back up for a second and connect a couple dots. You've mentioned a couple times here early on when you were sharing your story from your point of view. You said you teach mindset, and I want to hit on that again. But I want to also do so through a question of, man, you've been busy the last 12 to 24 months. Why don't you tell us what you've mentioned a couple times? Why don't you talk to us about what's been going on and how you've intertwined lessons for all sorts of different people in which you've been working on?
So a year ago, I was getting set to have a second surgery on a heel that ultimately was from playing a lot of basketball and running and jumping and Achilles tendon. And it was the second time in my life I was having a bone spur removed from my heel. I had that done January of last year, but it never healed. The heel didn't heal. Partly because the patient wasn't compliant. So I actually had to have that surgery a year ago this month to clean out the original surgery, and then I had infections. So that led to 5 weeks bedridden and giving myself antibiotics every day. And so I say that because I think it helped set up. It was a time of reflection. It was a time of thinking and reading and sort of not in motion like I had been used to. And then, as we all know, 2020 was turbulent in a lot of ways. And when 2021 came along, I felt, and I think a lot of people did, this new sense of start or energy or whatever it was. So number one, I said to myself, John, it's time to write the book you've been talking about for years. I've started many books in my head and on paper, and I had a file called books. And so I called a person I respect a lot who I heard was writing her first book and said, hey, can we maybe be workout partners in this process? Well, she immediately said, you need to call Catherine. And Catherine's the founder of a publishing company. So I called Catherine. And here's the tip there. When someone you respect gives you a recommendation, act on it. I acted on it that day. Turned out Catherine was the perfect coach for me. There's another tip. They say don't hire a coach who doesn't have a coach. She was the perfect coach for me to help me write the book because she coached how to do the process, but also owns a publishing company that was the ideal publisher for me. So I engaged with her in January, started the process mid-January, and the book became available in print on Amazon earlier this month. There it is in the flesh. So 8 months from meeting Catherine to people being able to click Amazon and buy it. Wow. So that's been a busy time. And again, I attribute it to the 2021 just kind of opened things up for me. Now, the second thing is Consergo, and Brett, you can weigh in a bit on this because you joined us on a Zoom, but Consergo was a concept that I first conceived in the late 90s before I met you guys, when my idea was to aggregate personal development giants at that time, people like Les Brown and Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy and Og Mandino, because all of them had their own separate efforts of promotion, but there was no place where they were kind of aggregated. And I just had this idea. And so I built a business plan around it, but that was at the same time I got started with the network marketing company I've been with ever since. And I had to make a choice at that point. So I put what was called the Success Company on the shelf, knowing I could revisit it. And over literally 20 plus years, I continued to think about it and add to the file until about a year ago, working with someone on a project, and she and I got talking, and I shared my vision on that project, and she said, I've had that same vision for 20 years. And that led to a conversation that was remarkable. And you guys know, I mean, the universe connects people. That wasn't luck. It was the right time, right place, right connection. So we got talking about it and came up with the name in the early part of the year, and that kind of launched as we clarified the vision for Consergo, and now we're in pre-launch. So in this year, we got the vision clarified of what 25 years ago was the Success Company. Today it's Consergo. By the way, that word is Latin, and it means to rise together. And so, Rod, it's been busy.
Man, yeah. It sounds it. I have an honor that it makes me even prouder to hear you, John. I think you guys know that reached out to me to write a testimonial to the book and to John, and I'm still waiting to get my copy, but I'm really excited to be. And you know, you've read the book, right? Mm-hmm. And to have Brett and I's name mentioned in the book,
it's pretty cool.
It's pretty special. It's pretty special. And I know you wrote the book, John, from a perspective of someone searching for more or looking for more or just trying to figure some things out. But I know there's valuable lessons in there just for the small business owner, for the general person that just, you know, is maybe searching. Talk to us a little bit about that. And you've also, we kind of uncovered a common thread regarding NLP and how you've got a little bit of that in there.
So the book title is The Tao of Network Marketing, and Tao, spelled T-A-O, is really a Eastern philosophy, and basically has to do with the path and the journey that leads to enlightenment and wisdom. And for years, I've thought about how much the network marketing platform can influence people and the rewards that can come from that for a person who takes the journey properly, and that there's layers of wisdom. And I thought, nobody's writing about this. And for years, I thought, no one's writing about this. Then I thought, I'm going to write about this. So that's really the idea, is the deeper subtleties one can gain through taking the journey of network marketing. But I believe, so first of all, I believe anybody on the journey or considering the journey will benefit from the book, no question. I believe anybody who is willing to admit they don't know what they don't know, and therefore maybe they've been skeptical of the industry, would be somewhat enlightened by reading the book. But I believe entrepreneurs and small business owners will definitely benefit from the book, because there's a whole section on people. There's a chapter on personal development. There's a chapter on skills. In fact, I want to point out one area here is the power of words. You guys are brilliant with language. You're brilliant with words. And NLP is a huge part of that. NLP, I'll talk about in a minute. But for example, just this, and you know, if you're in business or if you're not in business, compare these words: will versus won't, can versus can't, decide versus try, commit versus quit, focus versus scattered, appreciate versus blame, get to versus have to, want to versus have to. You know, I hear someone say, well, I have to, and I say, no, you get to.
Amen to that.
So, and again, NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. I was first introduced to it through Tony Robbins, and he's been an enormous influence on me. And his first book, Unlimited Power, is loaded with NLP. But these are skills I had learned prior to network marketing, but I brought in and helped teach people. And I talk a little bit about that in the book.
John, it's so funny. We had a specialist training yesterday, and it was about casting spells and about the power of words. And again, success leaves clue. Here's a clue, ladies and gentlemen. Right? It's another rhythm, right? And you've always been a huge component and teacher of us, and to the point to where when we were running together, you know, you better be careful what you say in front of John, because you're not going to get away with it. And then that would duplicate, because then I'd have my partner over here would give me shit all the time about it too. So, which is great, right? But
you said cast spells, just real quick. I love that. But did he talk at all about the most important spells you can cast on yourself?
There was multiple context of that, but in a sense of saying that, like, you have expansive spells and you have constricting spells, and a cant is a constricting spell, and can is an expansive spell, and the true, you know, energy levels of actual words that you use, and how incredibly powerful the written word is, and putting stuff down on paper, and what you say, and you know, it all just comes down to programming, right? And you do that long enough over a long period of time. And the best way I heard NLP described by Michael Gonzalez, who I've had the privilege of working with, and some of you know him, was NLP is the best way I heard it explained was taking the subconscious that we don't really understand, that's programmed in us throughout our entire lifetime, being able to kind of take all that out, put it on the table, understand it, reconstruct it, break it down, and put it into a construct that we actually understand, reorganize it in a way that helps us, and then over time slowly put it back into our subconscious, to where the information that we receive on a daily basis is filtered through that new construct and effortlessly produces results that, you know, we don't even understand why we're getting those results anymore, because we've just, you know, we've kind of reprogrammed ourselves. And so many of us are just, you know, we're victims of all these subconscious things that we've picked up throughout our lifetime from our parents, and social structures and friendships, and you know, TV, and all these different things that we don't necessarily really, we didn't choose to have them be part of our filter. We didn't choose them to be part of our decision making, what we do, decision, you know, all of the stuff that essentially, you know, becomes our behaviors. But subconsciously they just become part of it, because we're just conditioned to it. So, you know, being around somebody like you, John, so early in the stage, and oh, by the way, that journey absolutely came from the form of network marketing for me, and I know for Rod, allowed us to reprogram a lot of that stuff before I even was introduced to NLP. So you were teaching us NLP before we even knew what NLP was.
That's right.
Well, I'm glad this has been recorded. I want to go back and just hear what you said there, Brett, because that was incredible. Your brief description of how you view NLP, that was incredible right there.
Hey, you know, another Johnism is it's okay to be a copycat as long as you copy the right cat. So there you go. I took that from somebody else.
We've had so many fun Johnisms over the years, Drennanisms over the years, man. I just smile when I hear you say that, because it's so true.
Well, man, so let me kind of pivot here, John, because I'm very open and very intentional and intense about the fact that I believe network marketing is the greatest business education and life education that anyone can possibly go down. It literally changed the entire trajectory of my life. And that is in no way, shape, or form an overstatement. It is an understatement comparatively to what my life looked like before we met. And the the product that we have today is 100% due to those early philosophies that were taught, the disciplines that we're introduced to, the way of thinking, the possibilities instead of vulnerabilities. You talked about earlier about leading a volunteer army, right? In creating, inspiring instead of having to control, right? You just have all this freedom mindset instead of this constrictive mindset. That journey for me has been one of the biggest blessings it's one of the biggest blessings outside of my family that I can think of. It fundamentally changed everything for me. And I wish it so badly upon anyone out there that is looking to, we spend all this money on college, we go through all these different curriculum, we do all these different things that we're supposed to do to empower ourselves to have prosperity and have the American dream after we leave the household. But, there's this incredible gift waiting on this journey. And it is amazing to me that, most people never get to experience it. They never get to experience it to the depth of what it truly is like. So, maybe for a second, talk about, what that journey has meant, maybe first to you, but also some of the people that you've coached, and what is that? Give us kind of a glimpse inside the book of what that looks like for somebody that wants to go down that path.
Oh, wow. You got a few days?
Yeah. we actually do, John.
I think about how I met Rod. Rod was in Florida. I was in Michigan. I didn't know Rod, but I met Rod through people who did know Rod. I didn't know those people, but I met them through someone I did know, who was a basketball player. And so that's how I met Rod. Network marketing helped teach me a broader view of it's not just who you know, it's who they know. And, Rod didn't know you, Brett. He met somebody who knew you, and that's how he met you. And along with you came Taylor, So number one, it's the ability to expand. Tony Robbins, well, first of all, I talk a lot about showing up in life. Showing up is the first key to success in life. Tony Robbins talks about proximity, being at those places where you're in the proximity of the people you need to meet or the information you need to gain. And there's a whole lot of ways you can do that. But next, network marketing is loaded with leverage. And to me, I seek leverage in everything I do that's related to business. The number one leverage in network marketing is it's not just about you. You can meet a Rod who meets a Brett who's brother to Taylor, and all of a sudden you got a business going. And so the number one leverage is your ability to duplicate with other people. But the other leverage is they're not employees. As you said, Brett, they're volunteer army. They're people doing the business for their reasons. So they've got this self-motivation. They also tend to have a desire to learn and be coached and grown. So, and then the ability to, I started the network marketing company I'm with, I started in Michigan, earned my first $1 million there. And then I moved to Louisville, Kentucky. I didn't know anybody, but I had all this leverage, earned my next $1 million there. Moved to New Hampshire, didn't know anybody. Now, COVID has really limited my ability to get out there and meet like I normally do. But here's my point. It's portable. You can literally arrive in any town and not know anybody and start to build a business that can leave you and go out to other markets. These are huge leverage points. And finally, the leverage that the company's responsible for the product and the fulfillment and tracking commissions and doing all that. So it narrows it down to, okay, what's my role? Well, what's my role is to grow myself because it's a people business. And then to whatever degree I can grow other people is going to expand my business. It boils it down to it's a personal growth business.
That's so good. There was a quote I'm going to butcher this, but it always stuck with me through that experience that I learned that has translated into traditional business so well. Number one, leverage. People have a very misconception of what leverage is. And my definition of leverage is 1 + 1 = 6. You know, I have a certain amount of output and I get a certain amount of input and I get exponential output because of some sort of tool or mechanism. So that's number one. Number two, wealthy people build networks. Everyone else looks for work. I learned during that time that my real value has to do with my network, and expanding and growing that network in turn makes me more valuable to the marketplace, makes me more valuable to the people around me, and in turn I'll receive monetary value because of that. And then number three, I'm only going to grow to the level in which my personal development is. And that was so apparent early on. You mentioned it so well. I love that you say, I'm responsible for growing myself. Be around any mentor or coach who could easily just say, my responsibility is to go out and market. It's to go out and client acquisition. It's to go out and whatever. But to be around somebody that says my responsibility is to grow myself, and in turn magnetically I will attract everything that I need to attract based upon me taking care of myself and being somebody that people want to be around. So again, from a philosophy standpoint, there is just value riddled in that journey, and it's things that you can hear, these isms, but then when you experience them and you go through the activity, it puts a whole different level of belief and experience and learning to that. One thing you just mentioned was showing up. We talk about it all the time. Actually, we have the 3 pillars of success, and we ripped it off from a good guy. His name is John Drennan, and we beat it over the head to anybody and everyone that will listen, is that there are 3 stools to this game. And I wanted to kind of digress for that. I won't steal the thunder because I'd love to go locker room here with you real quick, because I remember going to Panera's and seeing this for the first time of this construct of success. Will you talk about those 3 pillars of success and what that's meant to people that you've coached?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, Rod, I don't know if you remember this or knew the context of it, but the first time I ever did a public training on the 3 legs of success, you were there, and it was in Orlando.
I remember exactly where it was.
Yeah, and I think it was 2007, maybe late 2006. But so it was an idea I had been developing through observation, and so here it is. When I taught MBA classes on business planning, those teams would write business plans of 50 to 100 pages.
Wow.
Now, that was then. That's not so common today. When I got in network marketing, we had something called 10 core commitments, 10 things. If you do them consistently, you'll be successful. And I thought, okay, there's our business plan. I love it. It's 1 page. It's easy to teach. But then I got thinking, let's boil it down further. What are the 3 things that encompass all of this? And the first is showing up. And in network marketing, if you don't show up, it's over. It's over right there, because showing up creates a foundation. Now, I think this is true in anything. As a parent, if you don't show up, it's over in a lot of ways. But if you do show up as a parent, you're creating a real foundation for your kids. But network marketing, that's the foundation. The second is activity. And everybody knows without activity, you get no results. And so that one's huge. And some people say, John, activity is more important than showing up. And I say, no, not really. It's not. And then number 3 is personal development. And it goes back to what you were saying, Brett, to become more, or to have more, I must become more. I'll only grow or succeed to the level of my own personal growth. So it's interesting when you look at the 3 legs, think of a stool, 3 legs, or think of a sandwich. You got bread on the outside, showing up in personal development. And then the activity that leads to the money and the people, that's in the middle. But it's being held together by the bread. And that's the power of those three aspects. And so I literally, working with people, I say, okay, if they're struggling or saying I'm not having success, I say, well, let's look at these three and grade yourself in the last 90 days, 0 to 10. Where do you stand in each of these? And they'll grade themselves. Well, I didn't have that figured out in 2007, or I had that, but the next piece I added around 2010. What's the quality of your showing up? What's the quality of your activity? And what's the quality of your personal development? And now grade yourself there. And that scorecard is going to tell you everything.
God. So I'm laughing because we're all laughing. John,
We're not
Because you guys talk about this all the time.
I mean, we do the exact same thing still to this day. If somebody wants to understand why they're not getting the results, it's simply a matter of going back to, we call it the 3 pillars, right? The 3 pillars of success. Like we do the exact same thing how we were taught. Let's grade it's not let me grade you.
Yeah.
It's you grade yourself, right? And then I added one, John, by the way.
Yeah.
I asked people, grade yourself 1 to 10, but you can't use 7.
Oh,
And that's a fun one.
thank you for that.
That's a fun one because you got to make your decision here. You can't just 7 is a bailout number. You can't use 7, right?
And 8's really good.
8's really good. 6, you know something's wrong, right? So,
What's so incredible about that, and I love that, I've always said if you're not at 7 or above in all 3 over time, you just won't break through. But notice 7 being the baseline. Then the question is, what has to happen to get to 8?
yeah.
Now, you might have someone at 5, and you don't want to ask what has to happen to get to 10. What you want to ask is what has to happen to get to 6.
Guys, that's a clue. No,
And so-
success leaves clues. That's another clue right there, right?
Yeah, and so then we get into the whole philosophy of becoming comfortable being uncomfortable. And people can get comfortable going from 5 to 6, but not 5 to 10. Let's get them to 6, and then let's look at 7. And that's a huge part of our culture is just what'd you do today to be uncomfortable? And once you get comfortable with what used to be uncomfortable, then seek out the new uncomfortable.
I'm reminded, sit here and listen to you, Brett, and smile, and listen to you, John, connect dots and smile. And I think to myself, I think about the fabric of our partnership. Before I think about the fabric of Urban Young, I think about the fabric of our partnership and how we've embodied exactly what we're talking about. And I think about how as our team has started to grow here, every single thing that we do begins with those 3 pillars. You know, John, I know you know that we have continued a call, whether it be weekly or every other week, regarding a book that we read as a team, a voluntary call. But on that call, I mean, it's almost a unanimous. You know, it's almost 100% week after week after week. The team shows up, just hungry for personal development, hungry for that community of people that want to get better and voluntarily want to grow. But we begin that call every week by reminding ourselves first what it means to show up, what it means to have activity, what it means to be involved in a journey of personal development. Our annual summit that happens every year, another I guess lever that we've put into our business to cast vision, connect dots, help people understand what they're a part of. That's woven into that event.
I mean, and not to cut you off, but it's a model, and that comes back to your book. That comes back to your message. There is a model of success that you get conditioned and trained on that you can apply to anything that you decide to do beyond your career, in network marketing, and a lot of the stuff that. And I'm going to come back to you, but I think that's a huge, important point, is that so many people in traditional business have gone, I can't believe you guys do that. That is so cool. And we're going, how do you do it? Like, what do you do? Like, we don't know another way. And everyone in traditional business is like, I can't,
why wouldn't you do it?
You guys are revolutionaries. This is incredible. How did you come up with this? And we're looking at each other going, I don't. I mean, this is just how we've always done. I don't understand.
goes
How
back
do
to-
you-
it goes-
training.
what do you
It
do?
goes back to power training with Jeff
2
Olson. What are
exposures
you
a day.
doing? Well, we do 2 exposures a day.
Yeah,
I mean, ask anybody. I mean, how
But
many exposures a day?
Yeah, so I don't mean to cut you off, but it's just you talk about that subconscious, training, that filter. It's just a model that has been
Model's a great word.
something to inspire others to want to participate in their own success.
Well, I think too. I think about the model.
Rod, when I met you, Rod, you were working for a medical company, and you had a long commute. And you were committed, and you were bringing great value to that company. And you were given some responsibility. And I remember you taking personal development into that company. And I remember you, combination of exhilaration, because some people, the light bulbs were coming on, and others is so much frustration because they looked at you like you were nuts. I know you remember that, but I finally remember how you were coachable. I mean, you took it, and now you're saying, I'm going to bring value to my company I'm working for. My guess is the owner and people there never, ever had the proper level of appreciation of what you were doing.
That was it is fun to smile back to that day. The first company I worked for, they started to get it, and then every other company subsequently after that, they looked at me and thought, no, we don't do that here. And I'm like, well, then I'm not your guy.
Well, or at least it's after everything else that we do. I mean, the subtlety from what I caught from what John said when he was talking about the leverage that network marketing gives you, and it's state to state, and they'll take care of the commissions in the back office, and you're right to the point where you could have just said, my responsibility is to, and then immediately you say, well, it's got to be to build the business, right? And you go, no, it's to develop myself, and by developing myself, and I thought that subtlety in itself is the Tao of network marketing is I think the Tao of the 3 pillars. It's transferable if you view it that way, and I think so often personal development or this stuff is great, but it's not in the right order, right? It's like, hey, look, if we have leftover, happy to do an event. If we have leftover time,
Such a good point.
let's
What a
do
good
let's do
point.
an optional call rather than saying no, this is what we do, and then whatever's left over we'll figure out after that.
So, God,
What a great insight.
it's so insightful. And another Johnism that comes from that is do first things first and do them in their proper order. Like we learned this 10 years ago. And I want to hear your context on this, John, because this has always stuck with us to this day. And I'm watching Patrick Bet-David right now. I'm a huge fan of him, and he has a book out right now, and it's about sequence. Right, business is about sequence. Life is about sequence and getting things in the proper order, which is the same way of saying. And his point is like, professional chess players know 15 moves ahead. Right, they know the proper sequence. Right, so the more expansive you get, the more you understand the proper sequencing. But it all comes back to doing first things first and doing them in their proper order. I'd love for you to expand on that, John. That'd be great.
Yeah, Brett, that's another example of the Tao in network marketing where you learn things you don't know you're going to learn, but then they become applicable to other areas of life. So, I just drew a blank on something I wanted to share there on that. Well, network marketing, let's come back to that. You've got to do things in their proper order, or you literally destroy a person. So when they get started, you need to show them the first step before you go to the second step. But so many things in life are that way. And so people might come into network marketing and think, well, I already know enough. I'm going to start here at step 6, but missing steps 1 through 5 doesn't allow 6 to work. And so, I learned that in network marketing, but then I became aware of how much that applies in other things. And you guys doing your business. I know, Brett, earlier you said something about watching the dollars, with your branding. It was 5 years before coffee mugs,
Right.
Because you've got to do first things first. And those are such important lessons. And doing first things first and in the right order, because in network marketing, I've seen people want to jump the order, and it just always, it's always costly. Always.
I think about the I call them retreads, right? It's like, and I know that sounds kind of disrespectful. I don't mean for it to be, but it's like someone that comes in with experience or someone that comes in with an opinion. And even if they want to skip step one, which we all know step one is showing up, right? To someone that's experienced or someone that has their own idea of what they've done to be successful, thinking that, well, of course, that may be your first step for the basic beginner, but that's not my first step. And they go to step two, but forget the importance of showing up and the emphasis behind it by design. I mean, you're doomed. You're doomed.
I just think about, like, how many entrepreneurs do we know or people that have tried to launch and they have got everything figured out except for going out and getting a customer. Right? Like, we call it getting ready to get ready, right? You know, Taylor talks about supply and demand. Like, don't get them, you know, there's a reason that they should be in a proper order. You know, it's like you've figured out how to have all this swag. You've got your signs up. You've got all this stuff. You've spent so much time on your website. But the simple fact of just going out and getting a customer and knowing what your value is and being able to tell that story is something that you decided wasn't important. And you've gotten things out of order. You didn't do first things first, and you didn't do things in the proper order. And then we show up a year later, and you are in the hole $50,000, $100,000 to launch your business, when the reality was all you needed was a pen, a piece of paper, and a person to talk to. And just go do that 1,000 times and prove the concept. And it never fails to me how much in any aspect of life, you know, we have a tendency to want to skip over steps.
So, Brett, right there, and so what causes that person to take the piece of paper and pen and go out and talk to 1,000 people? What's beneath that is the commitment and the why and the mission and the desire. That's what leads to that. And network marketing is all about knowing your why, because it's the fuel to get you through the difficult times. So when I have in the past consulted with entrepreneurs who are starting businesses, wanting to start businesses, new to their business, I always ask them, why are you doing this? And they'll say things like, I want to be my own boss, or for the money or the freedom. But I'll always drill down, well, what about that? And why about that? And you know you're not going to have time freedom in the early years of your business. Like, there's a whole conversation around why are you doing this? And that's a huge part of network marketing, and it's leverage. So when I work with people, I always want to know, why are you here? What do you want? Why do you want that? What will that mean? What will that look like? What will that feel like? And I'm sure you guys do that with the people you bring in. My guess, you're not bringing in employees. You're bringing in real partners and students that can grow to become every bit of what you've become.
Yeah, and you know what, though, John? We certainly would like to say we do that, but I'm just thinking out loud as you're speaking, and I feel like as we grow, the threat to just hire, or the threat to just skip the be and just go to the do, or just it's imminent, right? It's there, and this conversation itself is such a reminder to me to just, hey, make sure you go to step one. And I'm thinking about the why, and I'm thinking about, no, that's the surface why. What's the deeper why? Because like you said, it's like, that's something that frustrates me too, is like, hey, you want to start a business because you want time freedom. Like you said, well, do you know that there's going to be a price to pay to get that time freedom? And are you willing to do that? Is it worth it? Because if the answer is yes, then, man, go have fun not having time freedom, with knowing that the promise is that you're likely going to have time freedom. But I think so much you're trying to go step 0 to 10. Like, hey, I started this new business. I got all this swag and I'm working part-time, but then I'm 50 to 100,000 in the hole. And I'm like, what am I doing? And I'm just reminded that it doesn't matter if you've had some form of success. The commitment to that discipline has to stay true in order to those success to still come, if that makes sense.
It's so good. So, like, and this is another thing learned through that journey, you know, obviously starting in the network marketing space before traditional business, for me, it was like, it was beat into our head. Like, you didn't have a $50,000 investment. You didn't have a $100,000 investment. You just had your sweat equity. So to think that you're going to go out there and blow it out of the water in your first year, you're high. No, like you're feeding yourself false information. Like there's a certain sequence to this thing, and there's a certain price to pay. And yes, it's worth it. So let's get to that and work backwards. But I just learned from day one that there is a sequence, and there's a progression to this, and lean into that. And that's the prize at the end of this. I look back now, and some of the things that I'm most proud of and the things that I'm most excited about is we get to share some of those times when you were on the grind, right? And you were meeting resistance, and you had to pivot, and you were meeting more resistance, and you had to pivot, and you found a way to get past it. Then you hit another plateau, and you continued the same process over and over, and you stair-stepped your way up from, not using money as leverage, but using your mental capacity and your personal development as leverage. And, talk about from a philosophy and a standpoint of what you learned through that process of network marketing, John. That's one of the biggest takeaways that I think is an advantage is I have huge high hopes of what's possible, but very simplistic, meaningful, realistic expectations of what's required, right? Just because I have big dreams and excitement about the future does not negate the fact that I am very much aware of what price it's going to take, because you've been in the trenches and you've done the deal.
Again, fueled by your why. Hey, I want to make this comment. I recently heard someone describing or interviewing Warren Buffett, and had asked him, what's the most important investment or valuable investment you've ever made? He said, in myself. Mm-hmm. So this idea crosses all borders and all businesses.
Yeah. And how about another Warren Buffett that I just wrote like a little mini blog on this is just, people say, hey, it takes money to make money, or right. And I just landed the philosophy that it takes time to build real wealth. Right. And Warren Buffett's asked about that. And he says, I had good genes, so I lived long, compound interest, and I was born in America, right? Like very simplistic answers that basically tell you we'll show up with a good attitude over a long period of time, and that compounds in the same way. So one of the most successful investors, the most successful investor of all time, has the most simple answer that you can give, and that is, my friend, a clue, right? Yeah. And don't get it twisted. Yeah. So
get it in the proper sequence. Well, John, this has been an absolute pleasure. I have twofold before we ask where people can find you. I wanted to ask you, for the person that is on the path right now, the person's in the beginning of their journey, and they're hearing all these things. Maybe they've heard them before. Maybe they've seen them in a book once or twice. Maybe they're new to them. They have a desire to be successful. They know that it's going to take work. But it's, they're in the infancy stages, and it's hard for many of them to see past, 90 days, 6 months, a year from now. What would be the leaving from all of your tenure and your career of coaching people and seeing people that succeed and seeing people that quit? What would be kind of the message that you would give that person as we kind of sign off today?
So it's going to be a couple related messages. Number one, just start a commitment to reading 10 to 20 pages a day. 10 pages a day of a good book, that's a book a month, that's 12 books a year. It's easy to double that with 20 pages. And secondly, seek out a mentor and or workout partner. I look at Brett and Rod, you two guys, as workout partners before you even started your insurance agency. And, you've sought out members, mentors, and coaches. So that way you're not taking the journey alone. And, there will be times of frustration. So a third thing would be just get real clear on where you want to land, where it is you want to get to. And that doesn't mean a specific goal as much as a specific idea in terms of where you want to be. And always come back to that in times of frustration and disappointment. Let that help you discipline your disappointments by coming back to this vision you have for yourself. Those are a couple things.
So discipline your disappointments. I'm going to use that. I love that, John.
John, I'm blown away as we're reconnecting here. I think of another, don't do what works, do what duplicates. And I'm thinking, I'm just so reminded by all these things that we've learned over the years, but I'm also so grateful because even some things that come out of Rod's mouth, you forget that those definitely came directly from you. And what a gift that you were able to give counsel that duplicates to where I'm going to be able to be the beneficiary. I have been the beneficiary, and hopefully others can be the beneficiary, and so on and so forth. So that's a reminder from this conversation as well, as a new business owner, when you're trying to figure out all these things to do, figure out why you're doing it, figure out some philosophies and some core disciplines, have fun running, and then get somebody to run with you.
Man, that's so good. Well, John, thank you so much for being here. I'd love to kind of give everybody that's listening who would love to get some more Drennanisms. Where can they find you? And just kind of a sign off of where they can land on the digital front to get a little bit more about what you're doing.
Yeah, first of all, let me invite everyone to the Tao of networkmarketing.com. So it's, I don't know if people can see this.
Yeah, they can.
But it's the Tao of networkmarketing.com. Tao spelled T-A-O. That's where you could join our Facebook group, also get a free companion document and get the book. And again, don't feel like you might be someone who says, I just have no interest in network marketing. There's still lots of nuggets in that book. Secondly, I welcome anyone to email me at johndrennancoaching@gmail.com. So John, John Drennan, DRENNAN, coaching@gmail.com. And just reference that you heard the podcast. Hey guys, I want to say something to you. I'm sitting here, you've been very complimentary and, thinking back, and I'm just looking at the three of you, and I so admire what you're doing. And Brett and Taylor, you guys are brothers, and you guys are so articulate. And just hearing you talk about things, I'm like, oh my God. And Rod, man, working with you has been one of the greatest joys I've had in business, and seeing what you guys are accomplishing. Just the title, Be Extraordinary. I mean, that might be the best podcast name out there. So you guys are, you're just doing great. And I know in talking to you, Rod, it's not just about your staff and your partners and your clients. You want to impact the industry. You want to impact outside of your immediate reach. And that just speaks so much to you guys' thinking and philosophies and mental abundance. It's just cool to watch. So I just give you guys so much credit. It's been an honor for me to sit here with you.
I want to underscore
That's
that.
amazing.
Number one, thank you.
John.
That's amazing. I'm reminded, John, of another John Drennanism. And I'll just tell you that the three of us see greatness in you, man. And we're humbled that you're on this podcast. So thank you for pouring into this time together.
Yeah, thank you for making deposits early on, and it's fun, and we'll continue to make you proud, my man, and continue to push the mission forward. So one person at a time. Thank you for being on.
Thank you so much.
Hey, can I, one more minute?
Yeah.
Brett, and if anyone wants to learn about Consergo, we talked briefly about that.
Yes.
That's a platform to connect seekers with teachers in a community where everyone thrives. So if you want to email me again at johndrennancoaching@gmail.com, I'll send you a link to attend our next pre-launch event, because that's going to be a big deal for anybody who's on either side of personal development, a seeker or a teacher. Thank you for that.
Outstanding.
I was on that pre-launch last night and learned a lot about what you're doing, and I know that you've got, he calls them faculty, just coaches of different areas of expertises, and really bringing an abundant amount of teaching, content, and education to anybody that's looking for different aspects of personal development. So that's a great word, John. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. Boys, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. And to have John here is just an absolute blessing. So that's what this whole thing is about, right? We decided to do this on a whim just to get us together to hang out, and it's never short of rich. If you guys enjoyed the podcast today, this is one you definitely want to send to somebody. Share this with people that you know. Share this with somebody that's fighting the good fight. Share this with somebody that needs to hear it. Share this with somebody that's on the grind.
Share the book.
Share the book. And the reality is, John, I know you said if you're not looking for network marketing, the fact of the matter is every single one of us is in the network marketing space. So everyone can learn from that book, and I stand behind that with my own personal stamp. So, all right, guys. Well, as we go about our day, remember, it's not supposed to be ordinary. What is it supposed to be?
Extraordinary.
Extraordinary. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Subscribe to the podcast
Love
if
you
haven't. John, thank you so much for being on here. You guys are awesome. Bye-bye for now.